Stay tuned for Time to Talk with host Jennifer Graziano of Zion Memorial Chapel and Cox and Graziano Funeral Homes. Jennifer is here to discuss a sensitive subject we all need to talk and think about. Here now is Jennifer Graziano and Time to Talk.
Good afternoon, Westchester. It's 12 noon on Wednesday, and that means it's time to talk with me, Jen Graziano. I'm a licensed funeral director who oversees my family's funeral homes, Cox and Graziano of both Mamaroneck and Greenwich, and the Zion Memorial Chapel of Westchester. Every Wednesday, I come to you discussing important topics and sensitive matters that all of us need to pause and reflect upon at some point, and through this show, I hope to provide a platform to do so. If you're joining us on air this afternoon on 1460 WVOX, hi Gerald and everyone in the control room. Questions, comments, and calls to 914-636-0110. Welcome back, Facebook Live viewers. Happy to have Tim Judge here today. As you can tell, the video is straight, facing the right direction, sound is good, we're all good to go. Love to have you here, Tim. And my guest today is a repeat. He keeps coming back because he has lots to say, and we love having him. We're talking about where to live, where to downsize, where to retire, where to stay. Can you, in fact, stay in Westchester County after you've raised your family, paid a ridiculous amount of taxes? What happens next? And these are really important issues that Joe Sorecelli, a realtor by trade, a financial financial advisor, correct? Financial advisor, but a realtor by trade, Aging Issues Info. He has his finger on the pulse of all of this and more. Welcome, Joe.
I thank you, Jen. Well, let's even talk about housing. All right. Everybody was worried about, at least in Westchester County, was worried about how are the taxes going to affect me, the new tax law, the 2018 tax law. Well, you know something? We're going to find that out shortly. People are starting to do their taxes as we speak. They realize what they paid. Educated individuals that really were concerned, those people, as you said, that were paying lots and lots of taxes, they did talk to their tax advisors. And in some cases, they have to make a decision. And that decision, as I tagged it, was, should I stay or should I go now?
You know, there's always the case that's made that the tax dollars go into education funding. You know, you hear the lottery dollars go into education funding, yet you have terrible reports about the schools once you go north of Westchester. The infrastructure, you know, another reason why we pay such high numbers of taxes. When you go north of this area, that's not that great either. Pensions and funding government pensions, there's so many reasons, yet you don't necessarily see the state at work. You can't necessarily connect the dots between what you're paying and what you're getting. And the older you get, it just becomes one more expense that do you really need? Can you make that migration down south to North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, which are arguably coming up in cost in their own rights, as with everything in the world? But the case is made, can you stay here? Is it necessary to stay here? What are you getting? What benefit are you deriving from staying here?
You raised in that statement a couple of different issues.
Okay.
The first one is really a political issue.
Yes.
Don't want to debate that. That's not what we're here today to debate. Are our tax dollars being spent efficiently? And in most cases, I will say, I don't believe they are. We always see abuses in the use of tax dollars. Everybody knows somebody that, you know, has a ridiculously large pension from, and it is going to be for the rest of their lives. And it could be from a number of different areas, either from education, from civil service, wherever. So there is a bit of a crisis on that pension side, which you mentioned.
Yes.
And it really hasn't hit yet, just for yourself. I have a pension background, and if you understand how pensions work, those funding obligations are coming up. A lot of people say, oh, we're fully funded. We're not fully funded, right, for the pensions. It's based upon the assumption that you're going to continue to pay it. The state will pay a certain amount in, and that amount is increasing. So the state has taken efforts to do that. So that's the political piece. But that's the tax dollars, how you use them. But you also talked about, you know, which I like to focus on, is where are you going to go?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I want to move out of Westchester County. I like the city.
Right, your proximity to Manhattan, to Connecticut, to beaches, to water.
To everything.
We are a little biased, but we're in the greatest place
biased,
right here.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I believe I do know, but you also sit back and say, where's your family?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right? Am I going to be the person that moves to, Florida or to the Midwest and maybe I see them on holidays? I don't see them a lot right now. But at the same point, I know where they are and we get together. It's an easy commute into the city. Right? It's an easy commute into Connecticut where I have 3 children. They're spaced out, but they're all within a half hour of me. And then I have some, some parents. My wife's mother is still alive, and we just relocated her in 2018
Okay.
to a very nice co-op apartment that is logistically easy for us.
Again, it's also, you're in a sandwich generation. You still have children. They're older children, and then you have parents on the other end that need some type of care, some level of care, be it just that you're within a 30-minute proximity to get to them. There's some type of looking after that's needed. We talked before the show began, and you said that oftentimes there's a correlation between senior housing and affordable housing, or at least that's the perception.
Or confusion.
But the reality is there are seniors that are of solid financial states, but there's not an availability unless you're looking to go right to that assisted living or skilled living, which you do see those popping up.
That happens, but it's.
But what about the townhouse? The townhouse, the condo.
The interesting part that you just said, when you think of a townhouse,
Mm-hmm.
don't you always envision multiple levels?
Yes.
And that's the big thing.
Yeah,
that
no,
you
that's
have
very
to avoid.
true.
And I explained that. There was a massive building boom through the 90s, I'll say, and late 80s, early 90s, where townhouses were the thing. They came up on the river. Even right now, in Tarrytown, there are gorgeous townhouses.
Oh, yes.
Right?
That would be a good place to watch the bridge get blown up. You find a friend there.
We did talk a little bit about that. Actually, the marketplace is offering, and anybody that listens, yes, it's the other side of the other water body, that we're on the Sound Shore, but this is on the river shore.
Mm-hmm.
The marketplace, which is right outside, a great little restaurant, but also a fresh market.
I've been there, yeah.
Right? They're doing boxed lunches so that you can walk out to the park and see the bridge blow.
What's the weather looking like for Saturday?
Unfortunately not good, so we'll see. But why we're talking about townhouses, those townhouses that were developed there weren't developed for, a transitioning generation.
True.
And I use it as a transitioning generation because one of the things that I always try to tell people, and Jen and I talk about different ones. And I apologize, we're supposed to be off.
When I first heard that, I thought Gerald changed my opening theme song. I was kidding. No, it's his phone. You're all good.
You're all good. But there are 4 stages of retirement. And the first stage is what most financial advisors, financial planners talk about. It's accumulating wealth, and I'm going to spend it. I'm 65, 66, 67, whatever, 70, whatever the year is that you decide that you're going to, basically transition from an active work to, and I'm going to say this, to discretionary work, because many people do things in retirement.
Right.
Right? But, they don't need to generate the income. It's not a requirement. So all through those years, they developed, right, a retirement fund or had a retirement plan. But a lot of times they don't think about the next stages of retirement. And when I talk about that is, after that first stage, you raised your family in your 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom house in Westchester County. Now it's just you and your wife in the house, or maybe just you in the house. What's the next stage? Well, the next stage is usually when we start to think about, okay, slowing down and what's the best living environment. And that's where I have to say, there's a tremendous shortage.
Yeah, that's where the deficit is.
That's it.
And again, these are people who still have their financial means. They still have their health, their activity, their ability, that's all still there. You just don't need that
You don't need
large
a
home
4-bedroom
anymore.
house.
Absolutely.
And you don't need the large tax bill. You don't need all the expenses that go along with it.
So what are from the development and real estate standpoint, and Tim, you can weigh in on this as well, also another realtor here, what is the developer response? Do you believe in the next 5 years you will see that deficit having the gap bridge? Will people respond to this, or do you think it's just not a popular trend and you'll continue to see the sprouting of the assisted living and the skilled nursing and the 55 and over assisted living communities, but not necessarily the smaller home?
Okay, let's think about something first. An assisted living facility, by definition, means that you need some assistance of some sort. You're still independent, but you need some form of assistance.
And there's some that have different gradients of care that as you transition
those are
into
the
each...
CCRCs, or the continuing care
Yes, the
retirement
continuing
communities, and so forth. But what we really need to focus on is that individual that has a 3,000 square foot house and only needs 1,500 square feet with an extra bedroom, an extra bath, or whatever else, and a nice living environment. It's very hard to find. I have clients right now that we're working on the right sizing. I'm not going to say downsizing directly, but it is a smaller unit, but a right sizing that cannot find units. And what we talked about earlier is there's a crunch. You have people moving out of the city, the millennials, or whichever generation.
It's changing the landscape because as they're moving up, you're starting to see beautiful houses with character of a more modest size that are being torn down, and they're replacing it with homes that are just like going to the far stretches of the property line. Or in the alternative, with millennials coming up, you see a lot of bedroom communities and apartment style living with great amenities. They're trying to bring Manhattan style amenities up here with the rooftop pools and the views. So again, it's addressing a different need that's migrating north.
And the same spaces we're in competition.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you talk about right sizing, you're looking for a person that can go into a single, I'll say for transition purposes, because I did mention 4 stages of retirement. We talked about, go-go years, those first couple of years. The slow go is where we talk about housing and the effect, because you start to say those steps are looking a little higher. Then you get into the assisted living, the no-go, where you need help. And then unfortunately we have survivor planning, right? Which is a lot of what Jen you do, is preparing for that time. But in that second stage, which is pretty much the baby boom generation, they don't need assistance. They're still healthy. They don't want the big house. They're concerned about finances. We have some market volatility in the real estate market as well as the stock market. So there's a lot of questions that these people are going through and are running through their heads. And it always comes back is, should I keep the house? Should I not keep the house? Where am I going to go?
Well, you also have to be forward thinking of when you hit that next phase, because those transitions can come very quickly. We always talk about it. We spoke about it earlier on air. 65 is such a young, vibrant, healthy age, but a fall at that age could bring on a change of health. Or the difference of 70 to 75 or 75 to 80 chronologically isn't that great, but it could be worlds away.
There's unexpected situations.
Right. So a part of that downsizing or right-sizing mentality is knowing where you are now, but keeping in mind that there is another step you'll get to. And let's be honest too, in thinking of long-term planning, when you think about long-term healthcare planning, you have to do a financial inventory of yourself and your assets. If there's going to be a need for a Medicaid application at some point, there's a look-back period. So you can't be...
And there are protected assets.
There are. But
this is something that we're talking about. Just what you said is longer-term planning.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that transition planning, that first stage from a 4-bedroom colonial house with lots of space and all the other things, right? You sometimes want to find something that you can go through the next two stages of life. What I advocate is when you talk about planning, you say, all right, where do you want to, age in? Where do you want to age? Do you want to age in Florida? Do you want to age in place in your current home? And if that's the case, when we transition, we have to make sure there's enough space. And the scary part is, there was a generation, if you look at some of the older buildings in Mount Vernon and so forth, the apartments are big. Right?
Oh, yeah, spacious.
Spacious, big doorways, closet space, because they were designed for
And
people
even
to
a lot
live.
of character and charm to the buildings themselves. Brick, detail work, ornamental. I mean, nowadays everything that goes up just looks like it came out of the same architectural design.
And there's an effort to just keep on downsizing. There are 250 square foot apartments.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you're
know
sitting
if
back
my
and saying my
shoes would
closet's
fit
bigger than that. No, hold on. Right? But this is what we have to concern ourselves with, because the inventory. I work with realtors. I don't sell property or anything else. I help people downsize. So I work with realtors. I have a real estate license, but my focus is to work with an individual to find the right place to live. And right now in Westchester County, there's no inventory. There's no inventory. And we're not talking about houses, because realtors say, oh, there's not enough houses out there. I'm talking about 1,200 to 1,500 square foot apartments, something that a person can right size into, because a person coming in a 4-bedroom house is not getting rid of everything, and they need space.
Well, storage is also, I mean, where do you put your stuff? You accumulate a lifetime of stuff. But getting back to my earlier question, what is the response? Are you seeing developers recognize this shortfall and this need? Are you aware of plans for the construction of units as you described? Or do you think this problem will get worse before some relief is in sight?
I have professional experience on this. I am also on the Town of Mount Pleasant Zoning Board.
Mm-hmm.
We have an applicant that originally proposed some senior housing on Sawmill River Road in 9A.
Okay.
Okay, they did the market value analysis, and I'm an advocate, big advocate. I basically had them postpone because they knew they were not going to get my vote. But they chose, rather than doing the senior housing, where their analysis shows a trending of a shortage, dramatic shortage, they're going to put up warehouse space because there's a bigger shortage for warehouse space. Now, this is a business decision.
So for commercial use, warehouse space.
For commercial use, warehouse space. Same plot. 2 10,000 square foot plots on Sawmill River Road.
Okay.
I felt it was a good location. When you do assisted living, when you do senior housing, there's a lot of criteria that goes into it. It has to be readily accessible to
Right.
parkways, so forth. All sorts of things that go on. This location did it. They originally were looking at that because of the shortage in the community of this sort of housing.
So how did the warehouse come to be?
More profitable and more immediate.
Right. So that's the trend. That the opportunities present themselves. There's parcels of land that can be conducive to this, and then the cost benefit analysis kicks in, and then it's more profitable to.
And you get into, since I am on the zoning board and I've been politicking on this, ran for a different position and all, I can tell you that the developers would rather sell a $1.5 million house than, if there's a plot of land and they could put up 20 houses theoretically, in the area, rather than put up a series of ranch houses, right, on the property, they'll put up that 3,000 square foot colonial, get $1.5 million for it.
Is it because there's a stigma attached to that, or why in developments, as if you're speaking, do they have to have the label of 55 and over? Is there a way that, the marketability, which from a real estate perspective, do they become more marketable if they're just, areas that are designated for smaller homes, yard space perhaps, although
The tricky part of this is what you just said. HUD has an entire program that deals with not going to say senior housing, but 55 and older.
Is that the categorical distinction of senior housing, the 55?
Pretty much, and no, there's other criteria.
But that is the age where it is.
That's pretty much where it starts. And
that's so young. Oh my
it
goodness.
Is.
That's
It was developed when the retirement age, really everybody retired at 62. very few people retire at 62 now.
Right.
All right.
Don't see it on my
There are
horizon.
existing communities, right, that are losing their status because
Okay.
they have been selling. They have been selling to families.
Okay.
All right. Because again, this comes back to that competition. Young families and adults or baby boomers that are looking for the same sort of
Right.
property.
Right. It's a competition of needs.
Yeah. And there's not a lot that is being addressed on the larger unit size. You look at the smaller unit size. I'm going to say 230-year-olds can easily live in an 800 to 900 square foot 2-bedroom apartment. Right? They don't have a lot of stuff. Plus, they're in transition. They're not going to live there for a long, 10 years. Right? They're not going to live there for 10 years. When I talk about transition being, in stages, it could be a plan for anywhere between 10 years, because once my kids retire also, we're all going out of state because we just don't want to pay taxes. Or it may be a transition that I have to have an extra bedroom for a care provider.
Again, it's mindfulness of the next steps and stages
Exactly.
and forward thinking. And, no matter what age you are, what stage you're at, you have to think of the next stage that's coming.
I tell people you have to recognize
Mhm.
that retirement is a journey, and there are at least 4 stages. And what you said earlier does take place. I'm working on a case with a 66 and a 68-year-old. One is in the hospital, one is already in an assisted living
Oh
facility.
my goodness, and that's so young.
Exactly.
Wow.
Right? And then I have 2 fairly healthy 80-year-olds, right, that recently one fell down a small flight of steps
Mhm.
and finally realized, right, I can't live here anymore. I have to, we're our next step.
What is your advice to clients who come to you, though, and say, and the other thing is, too, because the county is very large, and if you lived on one side, like we talked before, the river side and the sound side, they're 2 different worlds. So you could feel like you're in another state, another part of New York, to go from Tarrytown, which is beautiful, but I grew up in New Rochelle, Larchmont, Mamaroneck side, so this is what I know. Do you find often that people have to go cross county or north up to the Somers area, up there?
Well, Somers is the country, isn't it?
Listen, I'm a big proponent that we are not upstate in Westchester County. When you get to Putnam, I can't help you. I mean, that's where the distinction kicks into me. But having had most of my family in Brooklyn on Long Island, I was referred to as upstate my whole life, and still drives me nuts. But they're different worlds. Do you find that people are just so hesitant to leave their niche of Westchester? If they broaden their horizons to different parts of the county, are there more options, or is this kind of a county-wide lack of availability?
It is a county-wide lack of availability. No matter where you go, whether you go up county, right, down county, wherever you may be, it is because as we said, there's a tremendous competition. There are the people that want the units, the younger individuals that want the units, and then the baby boomers or above. So the first thing that we start with when I start talking with a client is I try to get to envision, where they want to live. And then we go through things. Now there's this little thing. When you talk to an 80-year-old that has been seeing the same doctor for the last 20 years, are they going to move someplace where they can't go to see that doctor?
There's always a resistance to change. It's human nature. I mean, I suffer from it myself. But when you have that comfort, especially with your healthcare professional, you're not going to leave that, and not at that stage of the game either.
Exactly.
And even your senior center, I mean, that's such an important factor on where you are living, because socialization is key,
Keeps you
even for
alive.
your physical health. So
Keeps you
to
alive.
uproot yourself and go to a place now where all your friends are playing bridge here, that starts to yield physical effects on you.
Loneliness, right, or isolation is
Awful.
one of the number 1 causes, right,
Awful.
of dementia, of illnesses that take place, because your mind's not active.
Yeah, we just spoke about it this morning, and it's so true. And you don't even need a science medical background to wrap your brain around that. It makes so much sense.
It's amazing.
You're not stimulated. You're not motivated. You don't have that purpose in the morning. So again, there's so much that goes into planning, but ultimately, we have to think of something. So speaking to you sooner rather than later would help. I'm sure you have clients in 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. You are the decades man. And you are aging issues info, financial, residential, all the needs that come up as we age. You kind of connect people to what they need at their different stages, correct?
That's the key. The
You
first
are the
thing I
connector.
really try to get them to recognize is there are different stages. And when, here's, and I know we're getting close, but here's where I want to make people aware of. When you have a plan in place, when opportunities arise, you have to be prepared to act. You can't start. The most recent real estate transaction, most recent move that we had, we were looking for a large, unit, large co-op or condo. It came on the market on Friday. We had to put a full price offer in on Sunday. There were 3 others.
No, it's a fast-paced environment. But Joe Sorecelli, Aging Issues Info, you can be reached at 914-468-0186. That's 468-0186. Or at agingissuesinfo.com. agingissuesinfo.com. Give him a call, send him an email, visit his site, because there's lots of great information and much more where this came from. Joe,
Thank you very much.
And this is Jen Graziano, thanking you for taking the time to listen as we took the time to talk. Have a great day, Westchester. Bye-bye.